Another month has come and gone, and that means it's time to talk about the games I played in February. February is a short month. I wasn't short on games to play. That was dumb. I apologize for that. I started the month with the last month's Humble Bundle and a game called Boxes Lost Fragments. This is I guess puzzle box game is probably the best way to describe it. If you've played the Room games, it's very similar to that. Unlike the Room games, it's very not good. I really enjoy the Room games. They are just really satisfying, and there's been a few imitators that have come out since, and I have yet to play one of the imitators that I've enjoyed. I found this game just way too simple. The puzzles are way too easy, and really not that imaginative to begin with. They're all very basic and obvious. That said, it is still satisfying to continually unlock little parts of these boxes to reveal next level of inner workings and things like that. And the game is short enough. It only took me about 2 hours to play through. So I'm not necessarily mad that I played through it, especially because I got it in the Humble Bundle. But if I had paid for this, I probably would have regretted it. Hot on its heels was Wanted Dead, a wild game that just took me right back to the classic Xbox 360 era of kind of insane games that were made more for the joy of the game, so to speak. The voice acting was atrocious, the story was unintelligible, the just absolute hodgepodge smorgasbord of side activities felt very shoehorned in and awkward, but I loved the game. I thought it was a ton of fun. The gameplay itself I thought was very innovative, a cool mix of shooter and hack and slash game. Once you get a hang of it, once you really get a good grip on it, I found it very satisfying to play through. And it really, in spite of itself, it's one of those so bad it's good kind of experiences. I likened it to The Room, the movie, in my review of it. And if you want to hear my full thoughts, definitely go check out that video. Next up, we have the February Humble Monthly Bundle with Trepang 2. You want to talk about going back to the Xbox 360 era. This game takes you all the way back to the original F.E.A.R. To this day, one of, I think, the best shooters of all time. I think it still holds up. Trepang 2 feels like the sequel that we never really got to that game. The gunplay is so reminiscent of F.E.A.R. You can slow down time. In this game, you can also turn invisible. The guns feel heavy. The combat is so satisfying. And it's like the Ratatouille meme. It just brings you right back to that original F.E.A.R. game, and I absolutely love it. It's a game I've always wanted but never thought I would get, if that makes sense. It's so refreshing to play it. It feels just like you're playing that original F.E.A.R. game back in 2007 or 6 or whenever it came out. And it's an absolute hit of nostalgia, but the game itself is good if you've never played F.E.A.R. This game stands on its own. It is one of the most frantic, intense shooters. I think it goes head to head with the new Doom games as far as intensity and kind of movement and things like that. It's definitely one worth checking out even if you've never played the original F.E.A.R.s. Next up is the first game that we're going to talk about this month that is on my games I want to play this year list, and that's Sandland. So after I kind of gave up on Grand Blue Fantasy Relink's Endgame, I moved on to Sandland. This is a game I didn't really have the highest of hopes for. I'm not the biggest fan of open world games. I really only got it because I like Akira Toriyama and his artwork, and I thought the idea of building and customizing tanks would maybe mix it up. But I found myself pleasantly surprised by this game. It is still an open world game, but really the first 5 or 6 hours are quite linear. There's still a fair bit of exploration available to you, but there's not a ton of overwhelming side stuff that tries to stop you from going on the main quest. And I'm really glad they structured it that way because it does let you get to know the characters. They give them a lot of time to interact with one another, and sure, it's nothing groundbreaking. These are anime characters. It's pretty basic anime stuff. That's still appreciated to get to know the characters, how they interact with one another. But by doing this, when the game does open up, it actually feels more worthwhile to explore and doesn't feel forced or like they're trying to pad out the game. It's sort of, now that you've gotten far enough in and sort of established everything now, and they do sort of take the stakes down a little bit. Without spoiling too much, it makes sense that the gang can take time to explore at this point, so to speak, where they really couldn't have or shouldn't have before. So I appreciate that they did that they kind of really put some thought into the side content and when it's made available to the player. It is still an open world though, so it definitely slows down into the mid and late game, but it's still a fun one. I should have a review for it out sometime in the next few weeks. Next up, I continue to tackle my list of games for the year with Mass Effect 3. This is the only Mass Effect of the original trilogy that I've never played, and I am really loving it so far. I'm about halfway through, so there's still a little bit to go. I know the ending is kind of controversial, but the overall improvements to gameplay I think are fantastic. The lack of focus on the side characters. At Mass Effect 2, I replayed it. I finished replaying it before getting into Mass Effect 3, and I just didn't remember it being such a drag, but I really was not a fan of the structure of that game that was so focused more on your crewmates and doing their loyalty missions that it almost felt like the main story got forgotten, even though we're trying to prepare for this Reaper invasion. It just felt so aimless for most of the game. Mass Effect 3, of course, picks up with the Reaper invasion, so you have a much bigger focus on that main conflict. I'm not the hugest fan on how they handled certain things in the story, and I'll get into that more once I do a full review of the game. But the overall gameplay, and at least that core conflict of the Reapers are here, we have to work together, but the different species still are holding on to their biases and self-preservation and things like that. I think at least that core aspect works, and I'm really enjoying the game a lot more than I thought I would. So we'll see if it sticks to the landing, and be on the lookout for a review later on that video as well. Finally, I've been playing through Ys 6. I don't have much experience with these games. I played 8 a couple of years ago. It actually made my top 10 games of the year list, I think for 2020, maybe 2021. But I've never gone through the rest of the series, really. And with the re-release of Oath and Felghana on the Switch, I actually picked that game up and want to play through it, but then decided I should play through kind of the rest of the series as well. I did play through 1 and 2 a couple years ago. I wasn't super impressed. They're just very old. I don't think they've aged that well. And I don't think 6 has aged that well either. I think this was originally a PSP game, and there's just a lot of clunkiness to it. This is an action game, action RPG, and I don't know, there was a lot of times where I felt like the hitboxes were weird and I was getting hit by stuff I didn't think I was, or that certain things were almost undodgeable. I don't know if it was the camera angle or whatever. Still has some of that kind of more old school lack of hand-holding, which is fine. I actually kind of enjoyed, going back and talking to the different people in the village, trying to get hints on where to go next. But it's definitely one of those games where if you're even just one level under-leveled, you essentially get one hit by the bosses, and then if you're one level over-leveled, the bosses almost pose no threat. But to get that one level takes a lot of grinding, because they definitely limit the experience you get based on your level and the enemies that you're fighting. Not the worst game, just nothing too impressive. I think it definitely shows its age and has not aged as well. But I can see why people enjoy this series and why it has the following that it has. And I think if you had played it back in the day, or if you just have a softer spot, I guess, for those more retro games, you might really enjoy it. I enjoyed it for what it was, I think I'll say that, but I didn't walk away feeling like it was a masterpiece. So in addition to all these new games I played, I did also finish a couple of games that I started in January, Persona 5 Tactica and Fort Solace. I'm planning on putting out a review for both of those over the next couple weeks, so if you want to hear my full thoughts on those, be on the lookout. So far, so good on my games for the year list. I've already finished 3 of them, and am working on 4 others already, which, considering it's only March now, I think I'm maybe overachieving, which I think is pretty great. But there's some new games coming out that I do want to dive into. I haven't jumped into Avowed just yet. I want to get into that once I finish Mass Effect 3. And then we got Xenoblade Chronicles X coming out for the Switch in March. one of my most anticipated games. Xenoblade Chronicles as a series is one of, if not my favorite game series. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, definitely a top 5 game of all time for me. Never had a Wii U, so very excited to play through Xenoblade Chronicles X here in the near future. So we'll see. We'll see how the list continues to grow and evolve over the year, but I appreciate you guys hanging out, following me on this journey. Let me know what you played this month in the comments down below. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button, maybe consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys in March with the next video.